Hello everyone and welcome back to Exploring the Void. In today's mission we are going to visit the fiery Moho. So fitted on our little craft right here, we've got all the science equipment we have unlocked thus far in the game. Our Science Junior, Mystery Goo, Barometer, Magnetometer Boom, Thermometer and Seismometer. All nicely tucked away in that little service bay. So now for electricity I've decided to go with the fuel cell simply because it's bit better than having solar panels, because you can get electricity on the dark side of your planet or moon too. And of course we're gonna need a heck of a lot of delta V to get to Moho, simply because it takes a lot to slow down. So I've gone with some nuclear engines and a heck of a lot of liquid fuel tanks over there in an asparagus stage setup, which means that the one tank will drain into the next tank, which will drain into the next tank, which will drain into the central core. Now, the asparagus stage setup is the most efficient staging method that we know about, because you drop mass as you use the fuel. So this is actually the third prototype of the craft that I have made, because I really underestimated the amount of fuel I actually needed to get to Moho. So you can see there me adding a lot more fuel tanks and making this a very long boy. And as you can see in the name, it's the MTV Mark III. Now MTV stands for Moho Transfer Vehicle. And now just making my very overbuilt lander. It has way more delta V than I really need. And yes, because it's got a really efficient Terra engine and an onion stage setup, which means that the outer tanks will drain into the central tank, and once those outer tanks are depleted, they will be jettisoned. Now, and of course, just fitting out the lander with all the science equipment we have thus far, because we're going to need that to do surface science and stuff. I've gone for a white color scheme because the white is supposed to reflect the heat that would be there that close to the sun, because Moho is pretty close to the sun and thus there would be a lot of heat, but really it just looks the part and doesn't do anything practically. Adding those conformal storage cupboard things that they added in KSP 1.11 for storing all our surface deployable science and some EVA science and repair kits, but we don't really need those repair kits. And just putting the extra batteries and RCS fuel in the built-in storage compartments there, and wrapping it up all in a very nice fairing. Now, I had to build an incredibly massive launch vehicle to get this thing into Kerbal orbit, because it was so flipping heavy. And to store all that fuel, I've gone with the biggest tanks I have available, the widest tanks. And unfortunately, the main cell was the strongest engine I had at the time, so I had to strap a bunch of little side boosters along with it. There you go, there they are. Also attached with main cells and other little engines that are side mountable. Now, I guess I could have staged it better to make it more efficient, but really I couldn't be bothered. And I think I experimented a lot with it, and I eventually just got tired and made a humongous monolithic first stage with some SBs for a little bit of an extra kick there. Kickback boosters for kick. Yay, that's a bad pun. And then just strutting everything up to avoid wobbling and kraken attacks and all that nasty stuff. Making sure the staging is right and everything. Yes, strutting things up. Don't want any wobble at all. And then just adding launch clamps for aesthetic, really. You don't need launch clamps in KSP, it's just there to look cool. And finally, off we go to Moho. Now, this is a very standard launch, nothing special about it, other than it's a Moho mission, you know. Now, the reason I needed so much delta V to get to Moho is because Moho is really in a really low orbit around the sun. So it takes quite a bit to get our periapsis around the sun down to Moho's orbit, and then a lot more to slow down there, because once we're there, our apoapsis is still lingering around Kerbin's orbit, and now we need to get that apoapsis down to Moho to circularize, of course. So it's a very long burn, and having nuclear engines really doesn't make the process a little any easier. So there goes our first stage, and we can get ready to circularize that little maneuver node over there. Yeah, I guess I could have made the first stage a bit more efficient, but yeah, it's all done and dusted now. But now we can start our burn to get into low Kerbal orbit, and then get our mothership docked to the lander, and for a second stage that's still sort of attached to it, because it's a bit of fuel left in there. Right, so Bill's now getting across the lander so you can control it, and because this is a science save, engineers and scientists also have all the control nodes, I think is what they're called, but they can't make maneuver nodes. You need a pilot for that. Now just getting those two docked together with those little rinky-dink RCS thrusters, because they were only meant for the lander, not the lander and the second stage. Still half full of fuel. Now we can, which is a very, very big long burn with those really not very strong nuclear engines. Nuclear engines are very efficient but really weak and heavy, and because this craft is so big to have all the delta V, it meant that thrust to rate ratio was really, really abysmal and low. Luckily still had that second stage to give us a little kick. So there we go. So that made a small difference on our budget. Now you can see just pitching up a bit so I don't go into the atmosphere, which wouldn't be nice. But now that that's out of fuel, we can quickly turn around all speedy like and get those nuclear engines fired up. And there you can see I cut out because it was something like a 7-minute burn. Not counting that I used physics warp to make it a bit faster. But now you can see that burn is done, and we need to now make another inclination change so that we can, there we go, you can see now, so that we can intersect Moho, because Moho is at quite a bit of a tilt. For what reason I don't actually know, but once again it's a humongous burn. I think we actually needed to do 2 course correction burns. There's the first one, just fixing our inclination, and I think then a second one somewhere to just do some fine tuning or something. So now we can warp on our way to that burn once again, which is a very, very, very long burn. But before we do that, we can quickly grab some science around the sun with the magnetometer boom, because I think that's a new science experiment, so we haven't got that yet. But now that that burn is done, which I luckily edited out for you guys, Bob can go and grab that, do some EVA reports, but I don't think we did that because we already got the stuff we went to do now. Right, so now that that's done, we can grab more science. Why am I grabbing more science? That's odd. I am baffled. Maybe I forgot that I got the science or something. But anyways, I think now yeah, there we go. And then we warp on to our second maneuver to fine-tune our encounter. That's another inclination change, which is a long burn. A lot of long burns in this video, so bear with me. There we go. So now that we've done the brunt of the burn, we can fine-tune our encounter with Moho using some of the RCS, and because this thing takes a very long time to move about. But I don't think no, I didn't use the RCS. There we go. But now that that's done, we can now make a maneuver node to get ourselves circularized at Moho, which is probably the longest burn of the mission. I've said a long burn many times. Now we can get in the correct orientation of that burn and warp on toward it. And we have now arrived at Moho, all nice like. Now Bob's gonna go out to do some science high above Moho before he forgets, because he's very forgetful. All that lovely juicy science. We got a heck of a lot of science for that, and even more because we could recover it and not just transmit it. But now that incredibly long burn, which of course I skipped 99% of. But because that burn was so long, it left us in a very elliptical orbit. We couldn't do all of it at once, so we just got close slow enough for Moho, tapped around Moho, and then slowing down, getting nice circular orbits. So now that we are circularized at Moho, we can do some more science. So Bob's gonna go out, get science from the Science Junior, magnetometer boom, mystery Google, and all that great stuff in EVA reports. And then Bob and Jebediah are going to go into the little lander and land on the fiery little ball. Shall we call it a meatball? Looks like a meatball. It's pretty hot like a meatball. Yeah. So there they go, off from the mothership. And retrogrades, we can slow down and land. Landing is out. Nice. So I picked this little crater because it seemed pretty flat and stuff. No slopes that we could slide down or fall over. I've got Kerbal Engineer out there, so I can make my suicide burn. Now, suicide burn is basically just burning at the last second so that you slow down and stop just as you're at the surface. So that's the most efficient burn you can do. This is all about efficiency, but it's really not that efficient. I'm wasting a lot of fuel. So close to the surface now. Those readings on Kerbal Engineer aren't exactly 100% perfect, so had to do a few burns, which resulted in some inefficiencies due to gravity losses, because we slow down, gravity speeds us up again, we have to slow down again. But all that's behind us because we have now landed, so we can get that ladder deployed, get all our science from the planet, which is a pretty hot meatball. Yay. Now Bob's gonna go out to do some surface shenanigans, do a EVA report, surface samples, and all that great stuff. Frolic about, jump about a lot because his feet are burning from hot surface. That's definitely what happened. Yes. Now grabbing one of those what are they called? EVA science units to play some golf on Moho, which gives us a whack ton of science. For what reason, I do not know. Hitting a golf on the surface of another planet apparently gives you a lot of science. So that's great. Honestly, didn't know that would give you that much. And then there's another one we can get. Oh, the glitchy wingnut, where you fly up and I suppose the game thinks you are in orbit or flying. So there's another one, just chucking a wingnut. Some more science. This Kerbal Space Program is really weird. But now that all that's done, we can get ready and do some surface deployed experiments, which I'm gonna speed up for you because it takes forever to deploy. So there you go, all nicely sped up. Got a mystery Google observation seismometer, but I think that's it. Bunch of solar panels and of course the main station and a satellite dish so that we can communicate with the space center. Nice. Now that that's done, Jeb's gonna come out and stretch his legs and all that lovely stuff, plant a flag. It's gonna be so fun. Moho is a pretty funny place. Yeah. There's that beautiful flag. Hehe. Now the plaque reads, "Ooh, this is quite a toasty planet. Should have brought some marshmallows." This is now how Kerbals are about their snacks. Marshmallows are just delicious, but I think Moho is a bit toasty for marshmallows. But now that all our surface shenanigans are done, we can board our lander again and get ready to get up to our mothership. Now this ascent was a bunch more efficient than previous ones that I did around Duna and Ike. I don't know why. Guess I just got better at it. But I still overcooked the encounter a bit, so I had to have a slightly lower orbit so that I could catch up to the mothership. because if you have a lower orbit, that means you orbit faster because you're closer to the planet, and the orbital line is going to be a smaller circle, which means you have a lower distance to travel. So that means you speed up. You have a lower orbital period. Now, because it was so low, I couldn't use time warp, so I had to use physics warp, which took a really long time. But after that really long wait, well, I suppose it wasn't that long. I guess this is a more usual way of docking and encountering something in orbit. But hey, it worked, and I'm happy. You know, it's much more efficient than those around Duna and Nike. I'm just rambling on about the same thing, trying to stretch it out because this commentary is so flipping long. I'm actually quite proud of the length of the video. I know it's still pretty long, but like long Kerbal missions are like that, and it's also the first time I've gone to Moho and back to Kerbal, so bear with me. This is the first time I'm doing it. So yes, so now that long wait is over. Oh no, it's not over yet. There's the part I was telling you about where we're too low to use regular time warp, so I had to use physics warp, which is only 4 times the speed. But the footage is also sped up to 4 times speed, so I suppose it's 16 times as fast as it was. It's 16 times normal speed. Yes, that seems right. But now that we've done our little correction burn to get a close encounter, we can warp along and dock with our mothership and bring back the absolute bounty of science we have gathered from its surface. The surface of Moho, yes. Yes. Great sentence there. Amazing English. There we go. Now we can just burn towards it, get a nice encounter. I suppose we've already got the encounter, just get close enough to dock. And there it goes. Whoopsie. Uh-oh. You saw nothing. I am great pilot. I am much good at game. Yes. now that that's done, we can finally dock it and go home, because it's been a pretty long trip for those little green guys. They miss their friends and the green grass and Kerbin. But now that that's done, we can transfer them back onto the mothership and get all that science across there. Now Bob has to get out and EVA across so we can grab the science. Now that that's done, he can get back in the ship and we can undock that. Oh no, but before we undock that, get all the extra fuel in there from the lander into the mothership, because the Terra engine isn't particularly efficient and the nuclear engine is much more efficient, so we essentially make Delta V. Not really, we just use use fuel more efficiently. Yay, efficiency. I'm very certain that if NASA can save 10 kilograms on a rocket, they'd simply do it. They'd simply redesign the rocket to save those 10 kilograms. Or actually, I wonder if they would actually do that. But now that all the fuel's been transferred, we now have to have a pretty short wait, actually, it's not that long, for a Moho to Kerbin transfer window. Because Moho is so close to the sun, it has a very short orbit, so we don't actually have to wait that long. But now that that wait is over, we can make our maneuver to get back to Kerbin. There, which is once again going to be a very long burn, because we only have one nuclear engine left. All the other nuclear engines from the asparagus stage has been used up and jettisoned along the way. Now I'm burning a little bit more up on the nav ball so that I don't smack into the ground, because in an alternate dimension I accidentally did that, but then I reloaded a quick save and everything's just dandy now. No, most of that burn's been cut out for you guys. and we have our orbits line up to Kerbin's orbit. Now, once again, because we're going from Moho to Kerbin, we need to do a humongous inclination change, and just fine-tuning that. I think this one, from Moho to Kerbin, we only need to do one course correction burn. So there, now that it's quite nice and equatorial, we can warp across to that part in the solar orbit and do that incredibly long burn again. Well, not again, just do the burn. So there we go, that's been started, and it's now been cut for you guys. No, not yet. Come on. There we go. I need to practice my cues. I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but it's not seeming to work. Now, because that inclination change was humongous, so... But we had extra fuel, so it didn't really matter that much. But now that we've done that burn, we can get back to Kerbin and do that. Now, I did a small burn there with the extra fuel that we had, just to slow down a bit, because I really didn't know if because we're coming in pretty speedily, so just slowing down as much as we can is gonna help us not go explodey on re-entry like a bunch of the other jettison stuff, because it's just that tiny capsule. And it was at this point that I realized I had done a little blunder. I don't have any parachutes, so our three intrepid explorers are going to have to jump out Russian style, because if you didn't know, I think in the Salyut missions, the Russians actually jumped out of the re-entry pod because the parachute didn't slow them down enough. Now that temperature gauge creeping up there on the heat shield, but it's all fine and dandy because ablators rule. So now we've all slowed down and there's a little less fiery debris, we can get our kerbals chucked out of their pod. There goes one. There goes two. And Bill, as he goes out, he's gonna grab the science from there and go. There we go. And down there in a second, there we go. You heard the little explosion of the pod. Now, I got a bit worried that my kerbals didn't have parachutes, because with the 1.11 update, you can now change out the inventories to have parachutes and an EVA pack, which is the default, but you can change it to have an EVA pack and extra EVA cylinders, or just a parachute or something. So I got a bit concerned that I had, for some reason, decided not to put parachutes in. Luckily that was not the case, and we could all parachute down safely. Now, Jebediah, unfortunately, was a bit farther away than his other three green friends, so he landed about 1 kilometer or so off. I can't see the screen, it's so tiny. So he had to do a little jog and a run to stretch his legs and go all the way there. Oh, why is the frame rate so bad? Ah, it's the preview render, that sucks. Right, so now that that's done, they can plant their flag. They're all happy to be home, and we have snatched from that fiery little meatball 2,700 scions, which we're going to pocket all nicely and spend in just a second. There we go. So I researched, the nodes I researched was the unmanned tech, heavy landing, heavy aerodynamics, high altitude flight, composites, very heavy rocketry, high performance fuel systems, advanced science tech, and automation nodes. So I finished the third to last node, because I'm going with all the nodes in line with each other. So I could finish that third to last one, and the second to last one I had to choose wisely because I couldn't get all of them. But by the reads we're snatching science from these planets and moons, we probably just need to do one more mission, and then we probably unlock the entire tech tree, which is great because that means I've got all the parts for my 2 finale missions, which I am planning is going to be the Jewel 5. So I'm going to land on all the 5 moons of Jewel, excluding Jewel of course, because it's a gas giant, you can't quite land on that, and Eve, which is the proverbial final boss of the game. But that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And if you've made this far, please consider subscribing and all that great stuff. Hit the bell, like, and bye bye.